live surprise book reading. I know we had like 6 books lined up that we're going to read. I believe we have about 30 over there of the Maggie Irvine vampire series. But instead I saw this Amish book at Walmart. And I got it. And it's called Deadly Amish Reunion. And it has Anne Hathaway on the cover. And I don't think if that's officially her, but if it's not her, like...
It might be her face photoshopped in.
That would be... I don't know which would be worse. If Anne Hathaway was, like, moonlighting as an Amish model. Yeah. Or if somebody just photoshopped her in. So, this is about... It doesn't matter. You'll know as I read it, I guess. I'll read the back. Separated by amnesia. Reunited by a lethal holiday threat. Ginny Beller's husband was supposed to be dead, so she's shocked when he rescues her from an attacker. Although Luke has no memories of his English wife, it's up to him to protect her from someone who won't stop until she's dead. Can the peaceful Amish community he returned to after losing his memory shelter them and their son this Christmas when danger strikes again? This is a Amish country justice romance, it says, with the subtitle Courage, Danger, Faith. As I was skimming through this, I was not prepared that there was a lot of German English going on. So, we will go through that journey together. This opens up, as it would, with a Bible verse that says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." That's Matthew 6:33. It just seems like the most vague of Bible verses. This is dedicated vaguely for my children. Oh. That's all it says. It's got an entire page.
What does that mean?
For my children. Chapter 1 of Deadly Amish Reunion.
Does she want to kill her kid?
You know. Chapter 1. Where had he seen that face before? Luke Beller frowned at the face on the television news report behind the front counter. He knew that man. The scowling face with the angry eyes sent chills of foreboding down his spine. Whoever he was dangerous. Luke focused on the captioned words below the picture. Steve Curtis, aged 48, in prison for rape, attempted murder, and assault with a deadly weapon. He had escaped from prison. Police warn that Steve Curtis is dangerous and very likely armed, the news anchor said into the camera. The camera shifted to a reporter standing outside the prison. Janelle? Marie, the prison isn't commenting yet as to how he managed to escape. One theory spreading through the area is that Steve Curtis didn't escape on his own. The police are asking citizens to call the number on the screen if they have any information to his whereabouts or about anyone connected with his escape. Back to you, Marie. Marie faced the camera again. If you see Steve Curtis, police are warning you not to approach him, but to call them immediately. The news anchor began reporting on the next story, something about a series of home invasions and robberies occurring to these two weeks before Christmas. It's like the opening to Unhinged. There's violence every second. Luke tuned them out, frowning as he was trying to force himself to recall anything about this Steve Curtis. Luke Coombe. Luke pulled his... I think that's how it's pronounced. C-U-M-M-E. I wasn't ready for this random German.
Just do your best.
Luke Coombe. I should know more German than I do. Yeah. Luke pulled his mind back to the present and hefted the 50-pound bag of animal feed over his shoulder, nearly knocking over a small Christmas tree on a stand. His free hand shot out to steady the tree, then he followed his brother Raymond out of the small country store located outside of New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, their boots crunching on the December snow. Luke's pace was slower today, and his limp was more pronounced. He'd been overdoing it lately. The doctor had warned him that his leg would never be as strong as it had been before he was injured. Not that he could remember anything about that. Luke had woken up in a ditch one day, several hours away from his parents' home near Wilmington. He had no memory of how he'd gotten there. He'd been wearing a flannel shirt that had seen much better days, and jeans that had been ripped to pieces. His left leg had been in agony. The last thing he remembered was being on his Rumspringa, so he'd not too thought about his attire. Rumspringa. I assume it's
that's that's when the Amish
Rooms
go out and they just like party in the fucking outer
Oh.
before they come back. That's what it is.
That's right. We only know that because of Amish Mafia, and that is upsetting to me.
Well, and there's another movie I watched.
Oh, we watched The Shunning or something, where it was like a school
I watched
shooting.
That was like lighthearted, and it was like an Amish girl who goes to a city, and she's like, not for me.
Oh yeah.
And she goes back.
Okay. Well, we know Amish things through Amish movies.
Yeah.
I've never met an Amish person, I don't think.
I have. I've worked with them.
Yeah, I guess I've never been to an Amish place.
Yeah.
Because I have no reason to. He'd been able to hitch a ride from a farmer to his parents' house. Nothing could prepare him for their shocked reaction, and he'd been even more astonished to learn that he was not 17, but in fact 22. His parents had informed him that he had a fight with his father and had left in the middle of the night 5 years earlier. They hadn't seen or heard from him since. They had the local doctor come and treat his leg. He had a partial fracture. The doctor had mused that he might have been hit by a car, but if he had been, they never found out who had struck him. To this day, he had no idea what he had done in those 5 years. Luke, is du gut? Ja, Raymond, I'm gut. Just thinking. Ah, no wonder you're so slow today. Luke grinned, but in his heart he didn't feel it. Something dark hovered in his mind. He attempted to shrug it off and followed Raymond out to the parking lot. Several buggies were there. New Wilmington's Amish buggies were unique, black on the bottom with a burnt orange top. Usually, the Amish's goal was not to stand out. In this one aspect, however, the 19 districts of New Wilmington stood apart from the Amish community in the rest of the country. Luke clambered up into his buggy beside his brother, grunting as his whole weight briefly settled on his bad leg. It was a bitterly cold morning. His breath misted in the air in front of his face, blurring his vision. As he dropped onto the seat, an image briefly seared across his brain, and a name. Ginny. What? Raymond flicked the reins to start the horses moving before tossing a frown at his older brother. I don't know. He couldn't shake the sense of urgency. I just had an image in my mind. A girl. Long brown hair, brown eyes. She's so familiar. I think her name is Ginny. There was an unfamiliar heaviness in his brother's voice. Raymond was made for cheer, always ready to laugh. You know her? Luke asked his brother. Why would that surprise him? Raymond might be 4 years younger than Luke, but he had 5 years of memories that Luke, at 27, had lost. Yeah, I know her. Raymond hesitated. She was a friend of yours when we were working on building houses with Uncle Jed. Their Uncle Jed lived near Spartansburg, a rural area near 70 miles north of where the rest of his family lived. In Luke's mind, he could visualize his dad's twin brother. They might have looked alike, but Jed's nature was more flexible. Luke squeezed his eyes shut, willing the image of the girl to return. I don't remember anything about her. Why would I think of her now? Another question struck him. If we were such good friends, why have you never mentioned her before? His brother shrugged, but wouldn't meet his eyes. You were home. She wasn't plain. I don't know what that means.
It means that she's not Amish.
Oh, okay. See, it's good you're here. Because I have no idea what I'm reading. I was not prepared for a Walmart book to be like this. Suddenly, something clicked. Dad worried I might have been drawn to her, didn't he? It wasn't really a question. Luke had recalled hearing his father and mother whispering about him soon after he'd returned. They had been concerned that he'd regained his memory. He might wish to go back to English world. When his memories hadn't returned, he'd settled into the Amish world again, and had even been baptized into the church 2 years ago. Yeah, he and Ma'am were both worried. Raman finally responded as if the words were dragged from him. I have to find her. Luke hadn't planned on saying that, but now that the words were out there, he knew it was true. For what reason? It's been years since you've seen her.
Boy, you about to get shunned.
You want shunned, Luke. The picture of Steve Curtis flashed in his mind again. That man on the news, Steve Curtis, he's a bad man, with plenty of reason to hate Ginny. He'll hurt her. Again. Luke didn't question how he knew that man had hurt the girl before, just as he didn't question the desperation crawling inside him and making him itch from the inside out.
Steve Curtis.
That would be insane. He didn't remember much about Ginny, not even her last name, but she was important to him, and she was in trouble. Deadly trouble. Raymond tried to convince him to let it all go all the way home, but Luke dug in his heels. He couldn't ignore the girl that hovered on the fringes of his memory, not when he thought she was in danger. although he strongly suspected her image would disturb him even if he wasn't sure she was in harm's way. "She's in danger, Raymond. I have to find her. You can help me or not, but don't think you can stop me." He bore his brother's appraising gaze in silence, jaw clenched. He would not, could not, budge on the issue. "Ah, you always were stubborn. Fine. I will go with you. Let's empty the buggy, then we can leave." Satisfied, Luke nodded. "I'll call to see if we can find a driver." Raymond frowned but didn't object. "Yeah, if we're going to Spartansburg, it would be best." Without another word, Luke ignored his aching leg and strode to the barn. Their bishop allowed them a phone in their business for such matters. It took Luke 15 minutes to find a driver who would come on short notice, but he finally found one. He returned to the buggy and assisted his brother, carrying the heavy bags from the buggy and into the barn. When the last bag had been moved, he went into the house to pick up a lunch for them and gathered together a change of clothes. "How long do you plan on being gone?" Raymond asked from the doorway as he watched Luke throw the clothes into a knapsack. Luke shrugged. "Probably just a few hours, but I want to be prepared." Bag packed, he moved out onto the porch to wait for the driver. Raymond explained to their mother that they were heading to Spartansburg. Luke noticed he made no mention of Jenny, whoever she was. It was probably for the best. He couldn't have explained the urgency sweeping through his veins. When their driver, Sam, arrived, Raymond sat in the back, allowing Luke to sit in the front of the passenger seat. As Sam drove, Luke stared out the window, pounding his fist lightly against his thigh. He'd been down these roads so many times in the past 5 years. Now his eyes scoured for the passing scenery, searching for some clue that might jog his lost memory. Just one hint about who this woman was, and why his very soul screamed that he needed to hurry. Sam pulled off I-79 at the Medville-Conant Lake exit. Luke's entire body sprang to attention. "Is something wrong?" Raymond demanded from the back. "She's here. In Meadville. Not in the city, but close to it. At least, I think she is." How he knew this, he couldn't say. But now that they were here, he could sense that they were getting closer. This is strange. He couldn't visualize the whole journey or the end destination, but as they approached an intersection, he knew whether they should turn or keep straight. The streets.
This just screams to me.
Edward.
Well, that too, I guess, but also like, man, I really don't want to write a slow burn to my story thing, so I'm just gonna.
I know. This is the fastest thing.
I mean, that's how I am.
Saw the news and was like, you ever just see a news report and you're like, my life has changed. Just blasts off into his buggy. The streets with their wreath-decorated light posts were somehow familiar. He'd definitely been here before.
Like, you can use the phone to call a cab and say some English win.
And his brother being like, "Oh yeah, fuck it, let's go." Part of him was excited that his memory might be returning, but most of his thoughts were consumed with the image of the brown-haired woman he'd seen in his mind. He knew she was in danger, just as he knew she was somehow important to him. But he wasn't willing to share that insight with his brother. Not yet. With tension zipping through him, tightening his shoulders and clenching his gut. A little more than a half hour later, he pressed his face closer to the window, staring at the scenery. The familiarity of this place like a spider web that he'd walked under. He could feel it. It tickled his senses, but he couldn't quite grasp it. He'd been through here many times before he'd traveled, to Uncle Jed and Tante Eleanor's house. That's a lot of German all at once. Yet he never had his emotions been stirred to this extent. He knew this place more than just a spectator moving, though. He had lived here, or close by. He couldn't remember anything else, but he knew this for a fact. Under his breath, he muttered a quick prayer to Gott to bless their endeavor.
I feel like this is a series, and we have stumbled in.
I double-checked, actually. It's not a series. I double-checked when I picked it up. I was like,
That's what it feels like.
I know. She has wrote like a dozen other Amish ones, but these are the first ones that these characters are in.
Also, it's
Gott. Got. It's just Gott. It's G-O-T-T.
It's Gott.
Gott.
Grüß Gott.
Gott. Quick prayer for Gott. Is it Irish or German?
It's German.
I can't do a German accent.
Neither can I, that's why it sounds Irish.
Oh, well, I'm mimicking you.
It is Gott. It's Gott, and that's how, like, I think
We're gonna have to watch Amish
the
Mafia.
religious Southern Germans greet each other. That's what my teacher told me.
This is insanity. The phone was ringing as Jenny Belair shoved her key into the lock of her apartment and let herself in. Hold on, she muttered, kicking off her gray booties by the door before hurrying to the kitchen. She set one of the grocery bags on the counter, then she pushed the speaker on the phone. Hello? Hey girl, it's Randy. I don't know if that's a boy or a girl. Hold on a minute. Jenny grabbed her earbuds and pushed the plug into the audio jack. Placing the small plastic buds in her ears, she shoved the phone into her back jeans pocket. Okay, I can hear you now. No one does this. Where they put like the headphones in their phone to talk. It's bullshit. You can't hear any better on that. I hate it. Randy Griggs was her oldest friend. I still don't know. They'd known each other since they were both 11 and in foster care. They chatted for a few minutes about Christmas plans. Neither Jenny nor Randy had parents around, although they both had older brothers.
Nobody's home.
Are you gonna see your brother and his wife? Randy asked. Yeah, Randy has a guy voice until I know otherwise. Jenny washed the vegetables before putting them in the refrigerator. Her son, LJ, loved green peppers and carrots, so she always made sure to have some of those on hand.
I feel like it's probably a girl, because if it was a guy, it would have talked about his chiseled abs.
That's true.
By now
Well, we don't know about Luke's, yeah, his anatomy. We just know he's got a bum leg.
Well, he's our main character. They'll get to that when they're
They'll get to his. I don't know if this is one of those books.
I don't know.
LJ likes green peppers and carrots. No, he and Sophie are traveling this year with Celine and their daughter. Celine was Sophie's 16-year-old sister. You know, the name. I
feel like this is a lot of family tree that we're not going to meet.
That's what I was just thinking. It's like, this is a lot of lineage. The neighbors in the next apartment started arguing. Jenny flipped the television on and kept the volume on low to block out the words. She didn't particularly want to hear what they were fighting about. I'll bet LJ's still begging for a puppy, Randy laughed. Jenny carried the milk and orange juice to the refrigerator, opening her mouth to reply.
Identify!
But the words lodged in her throat, and she saw the television news alert. Suddenly, fear had choked her. Steve Curtis had escaped from prison. She hadn't seen her stepfather since she was 15. Not since she had testified against him for rape and attempted murder. He looked older now and harder, but she'd know that face anywhere. It's hey. Holy fuck. I didn't even put that together.
How inappropriate.
Oh my god. I think they just mean Luke being the dad is coming back to the kids, not she's coming back to her rapist stepfather.
Guess so.
At least I hope anyway. Now he was on the loose.
Yes.
He would come for her. She knew it. He had promised he'd get his revenge for her costing him everything. And Steve always kept his promises. The 2 containers of milk slipped from Jenny's hands. The gallon of milk burst open and splashed on her whitewashed jeans and soaked her thick pink woolen socks. I don't know why I'm reading it that way. She ignored the discomfort and the ruined groceries. Her world had tipped on its side and she was struggling to keep her balance. Jenny, are you still there? Randy's voice pulled her back to the present. Jenny squeezed her eyes shut, forcing her mind to blot out the memories assailing her. Randy, I'm sorry. I have to go. I'll call you later. Without waiting for a response, she hung up on the other woman. Randy's a girl.
Yay! Called it.
Her breath hitched as her anxiety spiked. The man who had attacked her, not once, but twice, had escaped from prison. When Steve had first attacked her, she had barely been 11, and her brother Aiden had rescued her before she was harmed. Oh, okay, so she's fine. Her testimony against her stepfather had put Steve in jail for attempted rape and assault. Her mother had accused her of lying, of trying to destroy their family. Even with Aiden there was as a witness, she refused to accept that what her children had said was true. By the time she'd realized her daughter was telling the truth, the system had declared her as an unfit mother for endangering the welfare of her children.
Yeah.
Jenny and Aiden were removed from the home. The mortification had been too much. Barbara Forster had divorced her worthless husband, emptied their checking account, and relinquished her parental rights. Jenny never saw her again.
Yeah, like the fact that you didn't believe your kids over
Yeah.
anyone else is already like, you fail.
I was kind of
You
expecting,
fail.
yeah, I was kind of expecting the mom to have killed herself, because I feel like that's all you can do at that point.
Yeah.
Aiden, I mean, God, this video is getting so shadow banned. Aiden and Ginny had no other family. Their father had died years before. They had landed in different foster care homes. She'd always lived with the dread of Steve returning for her. She woke up night after night, his threats ringing in her ears. She was to blame for the loss of his wife, his job, and his reputation. Because of her, he would be forever branded as a predator. Her fears had become a reality when she was 15, and Steve had gotten out on parole after serving less than 4 years. He'd come right after her, just like he had promised. Without her brother around, he'd violently assaulted her and stabbed her in the shoulder. Luke had heard her screaming. He arrived too late to save her from being raped. But he was in time to save her life. He'd grabbed the knife before Steve could stab her a second time. Once again, she testified against Steve, this time for rape and attempted murder. Luke had been wonderful. He'd stayed with Jenny during her therapy, brought her wounded heart back to life. When she was 19, she married him. They were young, but she felt that what they would have would last forever. She had dropped her defenses and allowed herself to love. Then...
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. Then he was killed in an explosion at work 5 years ago. His body never recovered. Needing something to occupy herself, Jenny grabbed the mop from the closet to clean up the mess from the spilled milk. Her hands shook as she turned on the faucet. A rock sat in the pit of her stomach, unsettling the bagel she indulged in earlier while running errands.
So, like, am I wrong, or would she be put into witness protection?
I think that's what is happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, like, she wouldn't be Jenny anymore.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I think it would be up to her to do witness
so.
protection. I don't really know how that works. And I mean, technically Steve was in prison.
Yeah.
So he just escaped like a fucking madman.
Yeah.
Images from the past kept intruding. Steve's face dark with anger above her. His fist coming down fast. Luke telling her that he loved her, that he'd never leave her. But he had left her, although not by his choice. She dashed her fist across her eyes, swiping away the wetness. She was so done crying. She had sworn he'd never leave, and then he was gone. 3 others had been killed in the explosion, and their wives had been able to bury them. She had to bury an empty casket and her heart. Though not completely. Jenny finished cleaning the floor and put the mop away, touching a picture on the wall as she passed. Luke Jr., or LJ, had curly blonde hair, blue eyes, and a smile that could melt stone. The one thing that remained of the love she shared with Luke.
Do not become your father, I swear to God.
The reason she was able to get up each morning and smile. Oh no! Shock rooted her feet to the floor. What if Steve went after him? Just a randomly placed oh no. What if he targeted her son to get his revenge? LJ was only 4. He'd been taught not to talk to strangers, but he was still only a small child. No match for a man like Steve. It was a good thing she'd taken the day off for a dental appointment. Jenny worked as a computer technician Monday through Thursday, but her dentist was closed on Friday. If she'd been at work, she probably would have missed the alert about Steve.
But she didn't. So.
She grabbed her keys and hurried to the door, brushing against the Christmas tree. We gotta keep remembering that it's Christmas time. Otherwise, this book wouldn't have been on the end cap by the register.
Yeah.
A handful of ornaments tumbled to the tree skirt. She ignored them as she ran to the small shoe mat near the door and shoved her feet into the booties. She didn't even take the time to lock the door. LJ's preschool didn't end for another hour, but she couldn't wait. She needed to hold her baby in her arms now, to see for herself that he was well and safe. She dashed down the steps at top speed, nearly colliding with another tenant. She didn't know his name, only that he worked nights and she rarely saw him. He wobbled on the stairs. Sorry, she yelled, continuing her mad dash to get to her son. Once outside, she had to slow down, although she did not want to. The landlord hadn't spread any salt on the icy walkway just yet. The path between the apartment building and the parking lot was slick enough to sled on. Meadville and the surrounding area was part of the northwestern Pennsylvania snow belt, so they got pelted frequently with snow and ice. After what felt like forever, she made it to her car and buckled herself in. The temptation to pray for safety for herself and her son hit her in a wave so hard, she rocked her in her seat. She shrugged it off. God wouldn't help her. Where was God all these past years? If God loved her, shouldn't he have protected her? She would never get beyond her bitterness. At least she had LJ. She'd also had her brother Aiden again. He located her 4.5 years ago. If only Aiden were home, she and LJ would go and stay with him. But he wasn't. He and Sophie had taken a trip to France for the holiday, with their 3-year-old daughter, Rose and Celine. They invited Ginny and her son, but Ginny had declined. She'd never been on a plane before and wasn't comfortable with her first flight being across the ocean. She was now regretting that decision. Had she gone with him, Aiden would have been with her when she heard of Steve's escape, and he would have known what to do. She couldn't lose focus, though. The preschool was 10 minutes away normally, but the icy conditions doubled her time. What if that made her too late? If she lost LJ, she would not survive it.
What time of day is this?
I believe it is the middle of the day.
Okay. I felt like it was later.
I know, well, it seemed like the end of the workday, but like if he's not out of preschool, it's probably like 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Shifting her car into park with enough force that the engine shuddered, she turned off the ignition and threw the door open. She hurried past a man dressed like Santa. Her eyes briefly met as he waved at those passing and called out Christmas greetings. She averted her eyes, tensing. Ridiculous to be scared of a man trying to drum up business for his store. But still, something about this Santa unnerved her.
Oh my God, is it Steve? But also, if he's 4, doesn't that mean he's in kindergarten? Doesn't
No.
he only have half days?
I think 4 you're still in preschool.
Oh.
Yeah. But that's also still half days. So it's probably like noon. Well, you have like, there's like the AM half and then there's the PM half.
Yeah, but if she's doing all her stuff in the daytime,
I don't know.
Kid in AM.
Yeah. I don't know. She nearly ran up the walk to the front door. The receptionist buzzed her in and she signed in, then strode to LJ's room. Mama! LJ's face split into a wide grin as he spotted his mother when she entered the classroom. She wanted to wilt against the wall. Oh, he was safe. No one had hurt him. Had she overreacted? No, she would never take that chance. LJ's teacher, Miss Prince, sat at a large kidney-shaped table reading with a student. Such a weird way to describe a table.
Well,
I know.
Tables that they have in schools. They got them kidney bean tables, and there's like not another way to describe it.
I know exactly the table. It's just kidney-shaped table. I'll be right back, Zoe. She stood and walked over to Ginny. Hi, Ginny. I didn't know you were coming in early. I'm taking LJ home early. Ginny rubbed a shaking hand through her boy's curls. Get your backpack, buddy. We're leaving. Goody, he hugged her. Are we going home, Mama? Ginny didn't answer. It didn't matter. He was already gone to get his belongings. Oh, I read that so much more sinister. Chattering to his friends that he was leaving early. Will you be back tomorrow? Miss Prince smiled at him as he stopped again next to Ginny. It's the last day before we're off. Ginny startled. Oh, I forgot. Next week is Christmas break. Yeah, that's right. Miss Prince nodded. With Christmas on Thursday, the schools around here are closed all next week. He'll have school off until January 2nd. 14 days before she needed to decide what to do. The relief washed over her. She didn't need to worry about making up an excuse as to why LJ wouldn't be back. Because there was no way she was sending him to school until the danger was past. What if it was never past, though? Would she ever be free of the past?
I mean, if it were me, I'd probably just fucking move.
Yeah, it's like time to move.
Yeah. Alright, well, we gotta be on the road until he's captured again.
Once in the parking lot, she glanced around, searching for anything suspicious. Look, Mama, Santa! Turning her head, she saw the man she passed earlier, climbing onto a motorcycle. He looked ridiculous. Without a glance her way, he rumbled down the street and around the corner. She felt silly letting him bother her. Regardless, she stumbled to the driver's door in her haste to get out of the parking lot. Back at home, she looked all the way around her car before turning it off. Not seeing anything, she quickly exited the vehicle, then moved around to the back to get her son. She kept a tight hold on his hand as they entered the building. Her phone rang. She grimaced, but it was Randy again. She placed the earbuds in her ear as they arrived at the apartment. She had forgot about answering the call, though, when she twisted the knob and remembered with dismay that she had left the door unlocked in her haste. Uneased rocked in her belly. She opened the door with caution and peeked in before entering. Nothing was out of place. The apartment looked just as she'd left it when she'd rushed out. Moving inside, she heard glass breaking under her foot, though, as she stepped on an ornament. Alarm shivered up her spine. The ornaments had landed on the tree skirt, not on her carpet. With a shriek, she spun his face, coming face to face with Santa Claus, the man she'd seen on the street. But it was too large to be Steve. Oh. It's just a random Santa. He launched himself at her, grabbing the earbud cord hooked to her phone. He quickly wrapped it around her throat and pulled. She couldn't breathe. Jesus Christ. LJ screamed and launched himself at the man. The stranger shoved him away with a casual swipe before focusing again on Ginny. She was going to die. A moment later, the cord around her neck went limp, and the Santa was pulled away by 2 large Amish men rushing through the door.
Oh my god, there's too many people in this fucking
There's a
house.
lot going on.
There's a lot of people stalking her.
The Santa bounced off the wall with a vicious yell, his white beard flying on the floor. She'd never seen him before in her life. Her eyes rose to meet his briefly. A shiver ran through her at a cold glare. He tore his gaze away before turning and bolting from the apartment, his heavy footsteps thundering down the stairs. She was too shocked. Her world shrank down to the man standing in front of her, staring at her with confused eyes she saw every day when she looked at her son. It was Luke. The man she'd mourned for nearly 5 years was standing in front of her, looking at her like she was a complete stranger.
You know what the worst part of all this is?
What?
Christmas is fucking ruined. LJ.
Yeah.
That boy is not gonna be okay. Santa tried to kill his fucking mom.
So, that is just now the end of chapter 1. Because we took lots of breaks, I think we'll end there for today. And if we need to, we'll just double time it on Christmas Eve. Christmas isn't even until Friday, I forgot. So we got a while. Anyway, this is fun. Yeah. I love this already.
What the hell?
It moves 1,000 miles an hour. I feel like...
Everyone wants this woman dead.
Rest in peace, Anne Hathaway. Alright, goodbye guys. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, how do I turn this off now? It all changed. Alright, you all get to see me be a boomer for a second. Yes. Okay, goodbye.